Good morning, John Q. This is the United States of Amnesia, broadcasting today as every day from somewhere between memory and forgetfulness. Memorial Day. I'm sitting in my car this morning on Sepulveda Boulevard outside the Veterans Cemetery in Los Angeles, staring out at a sea of white crosses. A place I seem to find myself every Memorial Day, because right about now my mind keeps drifting to memories of wars, poppy fields, fallen soldiers, fallen friends, my brothers in arms who gave their lives in places where the color of the mud and the color of the blood ran the same. Which is probably why, as America approaches the 250th anniversary of its birth, these images keep racing through my mind. The dead, the sacrifices, the cost. And thinking about all of that, I realized why I was so disturbed yesterday when I heard the rumors leaking out of Washington about the possible Iranian deal, the terms of the deal. Desperate times, they say, call for desperate measures, which is why I decided perhaps this was the moment to consult another expert. No offense to Jared Kushner or Steve Witkoff. So last night, somewhere between exhaustion, bourbon, and national despair, I held a seance. Yeah, that's right, a seance, at least in my mind's eye. Because frankly, the living no longer seemed entirely qualified to explain what the hell was going on anymore. So I decided to channel Will Rogers. Why Will Rogers? I don't know. Maybe because he always seemed to understand the absurdity of America. And these days, absurdity seems to be having a hell of a run. And this is more or less what I got. From what I could gather, in Will Rogers' opinion, America appears to have reached that fascinating moment in history where the fellow holding the gun gets to write the peace treaty and everybody else calls it diplomacy. According to Will, he never claimed to understand foreign policy. And most foreign policy, from what he could tell, consisted mainly of important men flying long distances to explain why yesterday's disaster was tomorrow's strategic opportunity. But then he said something that honestly made my heart grow cold. He said, when you let a fellow keep the uranium, the missiles, the military arm, and control the Straits of Hormuz, charging more money from the toll booths than he ever made from the oil, it ain't exactly what Teddy Roosevelt had in mind when he talked about carrying a big stick. According to Will, that sounded more like carrying a very small stick and praying nobody notices. And he said he kept hearing folks insist this was the only realistic option. But realism, in his opinion, was often what politicians called surrender right before history started using the uglier T word. Now, before everybody gets themselves all worked up and starts writing angry letters to the dead, he made it very clear he was not recommending war. Good Lord, no, he said. According to Will Rogers, war was simply humanity solving problems by creating newer ones, much more expensive problems. But then he said something that struck me. He said what was sad here wasn't the expression on Uncle Sam's face. What was sad was seeing Uncle Sam forced, for the first time in his lifetime, or the lifetime of this great nation, to bend the knee. That's the sadness, he said. Because once America starts kneeling, the whole world notices. Friends notice, enemies notice, and every dictator, fanatic, revolutionary, and strongman on earth suddenly starts recalculating the odds. Now, maybe he's wrong. Wouldn't be the first time, God knows. America's been proving experts wrong since shortly after the invention of experts. But from where Will Rogers seemed to be standing, this whole arrangement felt less like peace and more like everybody standing ankle deep in gasoline, praying nobody lights a match. And then he laughed a little and said somebody had told him not to worry because diplomacy would save us. Well, hell, he said, diplomacy is wonderful. So are seatbelts. But neither one works especially well if you're driving straight into a wall at 90 miles an hour. Then he started talking about the elephant. He said, if this truly were the peace treaty, if these truly were the terms of the peace treaty, then Iran had officially become the elephant in the room. And according to Will Rogers, the dangerous thing about elephants in the room is that after a while, everybody starts pretending they belong there. People eat dinner around the elephant, hold meetings around the elephant, build policy around the elephant, and eventually somebody says, well, hell, maybe the elephant lives here now. Or maybe even worse, they start consulting the fucking elephant. According to Will Rogers, that's usually how civilizations get into trouble. Not all at once, just one compromise at a time until absurdity starts sounding reasonable. And once absurdity sounds reasonable, history generally clears its throat and reaches for a shovel. That's when I wanted to break off communication. But I didn't. I stayed to the end until he said, I never made a joke in my life that wasn't hiding a wound somewhere underneath it. And right now, he thought we should all start praying that wound isn't fatal. Truth is virtue. Amnesia is sin. Remember,